The front doors of the Meridian Bay Police Department slammed open like something out of a nightmare. A battered German shepherd, coat slick with blood and swamp muck, stumbled in under the flickering fluorescent lights. His flank and leg, the dog stayed upright, driven by something beyond instincts, something like duty. Strapped across his back with torn strips of shirt was a small girl, pale as morning fog, arms limp, lips slightly parted. Madre de Deus, Officer Davis whispered, already sprinting forward. The dog crumpled, but let out a low growl that froze everyone mid-step when they got too close. Even at death's door, he guarded her. Sheriff Patterson dropped to one knee. "That's Lily Sullivan," he said quietly, recognizing the copper hair. Missing 72 hours. Agent Diana Walker stepped from the rain-soaked doorway, her FBI windbreaker dripping. She knelt, unfastened the girl with careful hands. Lily stirred, eyelids fluttering. Then she whispered 6 chilling words. "There are others. Lots. In boats." Meridian? Bay clung to the Georgia coastline like an old secret, dressed up pretty with shrimp boats and weeping oaks. The kind of place where everyone smiled and waved but locked their doors tight at night. The kind of town where bad things weren't supposed to happen until they did. Ethan Sullivan wasn't always the man neighbors now pitied. At 38, the ex-Marine and once renowned carpenter had a quiet pride about him back before his world shattered. 3 years ago, he found his wife Rebecca in their kitchen, her blood spilling across the same floors he'd installed with love. Since then, he drank to calm the shaking in his hands. The precision that once defined his craft had eroded, warped. By grief and whiskey, Lily Sullivan was 8, with her mother's fierce copper hair and a stare that seemed to see past grown-ups' words. Since the murder, she barely spoke, drew in sketchbooks she wouldn't let anyone see, and held on to Ranger like he was her last tether to this world. Maybe he was. Folks on Sycamore Street often saw the pair on their porch swing, the girl leaning close, whispering things into Ranger's torn ear, while the old shepherd simply listened. Ranger wasn't just a dog, he was a war-torn survivor. A ragged scar split his left eye, and a stiff gait spoke of old injuries. But he still moved with the quiet authority of a veteran. Labeled unadoptable after a botched drug raid left him traumatized, most people saw liability. Rebecca saw fire, loyalty. Potential Dot Maxwell Thornton's name was plastered across school libraries and hospital wings from Brunswick to Savannah. His New Horizon Foundation claimed to uplift struggling kids, giving them scholarships and mentorship. No one asked why he owned half a dozen private boats, or why some scholarship recipients never returned from their retreats. Dr. Eleanor Hayes ran the only vet clinic for miles, her soft-spoken manner and gentle touch earning the trust of every pet parent around. But behind that practiced smile was something cold, something Ranger had sniffed out before any human noticed, whose 2-year hunt for missing children from Virginia to Florida had led her straight to this, seemingly wholesome towns, days before Lily vanished. Tuesday morning had started like any other in the Sullivan house. Ethan dragged himself out of bed, head pounding from last night's bottle, his throat dry as sandpaper. Slits of sunlight stabbed through crooked blinds, catching on floating dust motes above piles of laundry. "Lily pad," he called out, voice hoarse as he shuffled into the kitchen, still in his undershirt. School time. Downstairs, Lily was already dressed, her favorite blue jumper neat and clean. Ranger sat beside her like a statue, watching Ethan with an unsettling intensity that made the man's skin prickle. That dog had always been Rebecca's. Her shadow, Ethan asked, pouring stale coffee into a chipped mug that read "World's Best Data Relic from Another Life." Lily nodded, her hand stroking Ranger's notched ear. "Yeah, well, we all do Mia." The rest of the morning played out like muscle memory. Brush teeth, pack bag, tie shoes. Ranger trailed them to the door, claws tapping against the floor. At the threshold, Lily dropped to her knees and pressed her forehead to Ranger's. Ethan saw it every day, but it still felt like he was eavesdropping on something sacred. "Keep the monsters away till I get back," she whispered. Ranger licked her cheek once, then sat like a soldier on watch, never blinking. Ethan watched him in the rearview mirror as they pulled away, still there, still watching. Day should have been just another Tuesday. Ethan spent it replacing deck boards at the Wilson place, hammering to a rhythm that let his mind go numb. Around 2:30, his phone buzzed a message from Mrs. Kaplan next door, who usually watched Lily in the afternoons. Appointment today, someone already picked her up from school. Ethan's blood went cold. This is Ethan Sullivan, Lily's dad, who picked her up. The pause on the other end was long enough to raise the hairs on his neck. "Mr. Sullivan," she had a note, "said it was from you. Signed, said there was a family emergency." Ethan's truck tires screeched as he peeled into the school lot. The security footage showed only the back of a woman, face masked, wearing a loose hat, leading Lily to a dark sedan. No struggle, no hesitation. She just went by nightfall. An Amber Alert was issued. Cops swarmed Ethan's house. Questions flew. Ethan paced like a caged animal, tugging at his hair while the old floor groaned beneath every step. "Anyone who might want to hurt you?" Sheriff Patterson asked, his voice low, eyes shadowed beneath his hat. "Any custody battles? Enemies?" Then Ranger Wind at the back door, scratching like mad. Ethan barely noticed. "Somebody shut that dog up," grumbled Deputy Morris, adjusting his earpiece. But Ranger Barkloud, urgent then, bolted to Ethan, grabbed at his jeans with his teeth, and yanked before darting back to the door. Again and again. He wasn't just making noise, he was trying to say something. Our Ethan's jaw tightened, irritation bubbling beneath his skin. "The dog's just acting up," he snapped, his voice sharp. Sheriff Patterson kept his eyes locked on the agitated shepherd. "He might be sensing something," the sheriff said slowly. "These working breeds, they catch what we miss." Ethan rolled his eyes. "He's anxious, that's all. He doesn't like change." But even as he said it, the words tasted wrong. He used to be calm-centered when Rebecca was alive. But after she died, grief twisted. Ethan's heart and all that pain turned into bitterness, aimed at the only creature that had survived. As the night crept in and volunteer search teams scoured the wooded stretch behind the elementary school, Ranger grew more erratic. He nosed through the closet and dragged out Rebecca's old jacket, Wind at Ethan's side, and finally scratched at the locked door to her home office, the place Ethan hadn't touched in 3 years. "For God's sake, stop it," Ethan barked, grabbing the dog by the collar, but Ranger growled a deep, guttural warning that made Ethan let go. They stared at each other, the weight of a shared but broken bond hanging heavy in the air. And then it came, uninvited Rebecca's voice. "If anything happens to me, trust Ranger. He's trained for more than you think." He had laughed. At the time, kissed her temple. "You and your conspiracies, Beck." He was wrong. Dead wrong. As midnight inched closer and the woods yielded no trace of Lily, Ethan's resolve crumbled. His hands trembled as he twisted open a bottle of bourbon and poured until the glass shook in his grip. Across the room, Ranger sat watching, judging. Ethan looked away. "Don't look at me like that," he muttered. "You were there. You let her die." The words hung, bitter and venomous. Ranger's ears flattened, his body slinking toward Lily's room, where he curled up on her bed where the smell of her shampoo still lingered. When Agent Diana Walker arrived a little past midnight, crisp in her FBI windbreaker, Ethan barely looked up. "Mr. Sullivan," she said, her voice slicing through the low murmurs of local cops. "I need to ask you some questions about your wife's work before she died." Ethan blinked like he was waking from a bad dream. "Rebecca, what does this have to do with Lily?" Agent Walker didn't flinch. "Maybe everything," she said. "Your wife was investigating child abductions along the coast, cases that didn't stop after she was killed." Before Ethan could even process the words, a crash rang out from the garage. A deputy jogged in, face pale. "The dog he busted through the window. He's gone." Ethan slumped back, the weight of regret crashing over him. Rebecca, Lily, now Ranger, all gone. All because he hadn't listened. "He's going after her," Ethan whispered, eyes glassy with realization. "He always knew more than I did." As morning light broke over Meridian Bay, casting a golden shimmer on the harbor, Ranger was already far from home. His paws pounded. The pavement, nose low, chasing the scent of a girl who had whispered secrets into his ear every night for 3 years. He ignored hunger, ignored pain. He moved with the fire of a promise to a woman long buried and a child who'd loved him. When no one else would, his escape wasn't reckless, it was intentional. The garage window hadn't shattered it, had been nudged open, precisely where Ethan had forgotten to bolt it months ago, By sunrise Thief, Shepherd was already 4 miles deep, weaving through sleepy neighborhoods, cutting across alleys, toward the waterfront. Back at the house, Ethan stirred on the couch, his mouth sour with bourbon and guilt. For a moment, he forgot everything until Agent Walker's voice called from the kitchen. Traffic. Cam on Harbor Street caught your dog at 4:37 a.m. heading east, toward the docks. Ethan sat up, the world spinning. He's tracking her, he said, more to himself. Rebecca used to run search games with him and Lily. Walker looked up, eyes sharpening. She trained him for tracking. Ethan nodded slowly, pain in every movement. She said it was for a book, but now, I don't know. He moved to the hallway closet, pulling out a dusty box of notebooks, a recorder, and a dog training manual, its margins full of Rebecca's handwriting. She saved Ranger from a busted dog fighting. Ring, Ethan said, voice gravelly. He was trained as a bite dog, but they tried to make him fight. Damn near killed him when he didn't. His fingers traced the scribbled notes. Rebecca said she'd never seen a dog with so much heart. Walker sat across from him, her coffee untouched. Mr. Sullivan, I need to be blunt. Your wife was investigating Maxwell Thornton before she was murdered. Does that name mean anything to you? Ethan frowned. Thornton, the rich guy. I did some finish work at his place on Osprey Island. What would she want with him? Walker's expression didn't change. His New Horizon Foundation is tied to several missing kids across the eastern coast. Your wife was onto something. The word shit, like a punch to the gut. Ethan leaned against the wall, heart racing, memories crashing together like puzzle pieces he hadn't known were part of the same picture. Rebecca's sleepless nights, the locked office. Her obsession with Ranger's training, her death written off as a burglary gone wrong. You think he had her killed? Ethan asked, his voice hollow. And now Lily's next. Walker didn't answer directly. We don't have enough yet. But the pattern, I don't need more, Ethan cut in, his face hardening. My wife is dead. My daughter's missing. My dog's chasing ghosts. That's all the damn pattern I need. He grabbed the key from its hook, one he hadn't touched in years, and turned it in the lock. The door cracked open, revealing a space untouched since the funeral. Dust floated in sunbeams. On the desk, Rebecca's laptop sat, its battery long dead. Pinned to the wall was a map of Georgia's coastline. Red markers scattered like blood drops. Nearby, photos of missing children, news articles, police sketches. And at the center of it, a glossy pamphlet for the New Horizon Foundation, Thornton's smug smile printed across it. She was building a case, Walker murmured, stepping inside. Her voice softened. We found copies of this in her safety deposit box, too. Ethan said nothing, but his fists clenched at his sides. This wasn't just about loss anymore. This was war. That's how I ended up in Meridian Bay. Ethan stood in front of the wall of clippings. His wife had pieced together like a obsession he once dismissed as her chasing ghosts. Why didn't you tell me this when you got here? He asked, voice tight, eyes darting across names and strings. Before Lily vanished. Walker didn't answer right away. The silence between them was a loud confession. You were using my daughter, Ethan said, the realization hitting him. Like a gut punch, you knew someone might target her. No, Walker replied, steady and unflinching. We never had any intel pointing to Lily. We were tracking Thornton. Your family was never supposed to be in this. But they are, Ethan growled. So now we find her. Before either could speak again, Sheriff Patterson stepped through the office door. His face like stone. Just got a call from Dr. Hayes. Your dog attacked someone at the marina. Harbor master tried to shoot him. Dog fled toward Osprey Island. The fire in Ethan's chest flared. Shot at him, he snapped. Ranger doesn't attack unless he's got a reason. Walker was already reaching for her jacket. The guy he went after works for Thornton's foundation. Harbor master said he was boarding one of their boats when Ranger lunged. Maybe Rangers. Trying to lead us in several miles away, Ranger crouched low in the marsh grass, nearly invisible in the dappled light. His flank was slick with blood where the bullet had grazed him, but he felt no pain. Ahead, the crumbling bones of an old seafood plant loomed across Osprey Island, its dock stretching like a broken finger into dark, brackish water. 3 boats bobbed in the tide. Inside, he heard voices, men talking in hushed tones, the clank of metal stairs, the scrape of crates, then children crying. Ranger froze as a scent rode the windsalt, sweat, and something achingly familiar. Lily, staying low. He circled the building's perimeter, years of training guiding his every step. On the east side, a loading bay door hung slightly open. He slipped inside, moving like a ghost through rusting machinery and shadowed corridors. Her scent was stronger here. He climbed a set of steel stairs, nose twitching, ears alert. Outside, one closed door, he stopped cold. She was there. He whined low, pressing his nose to the crack beneath it. "Ranger," a soft voice whispered. "Is that you?" He gave another soft whimper. "I knew you'd find me." Her small fingers reached under the door, dirty and trembling. Ranger licked them gently. Salt, dirt, fear. "In the rooms next to me, they said they're moving us tonight." Footsteps echoed nearby. Ranger darted into a nearby closet as a guard strolled past, keys jangling like warning bells. When the hall fell silent again, he returned to her door, nose pressed to the lock. "You can't open it," she said, her voice trembling. "It's okay, just get Daddy, okay?" Frustration flickered in Ranger's eyes, his scarred face twisted in thought. Then clarity. He couldn't speak human words, but Rebecca had trained him to solve problems. To protect, he'd come back. But first, he had to make sure they couldn't move her before help arrived. Below, a door opened. Boots climbed the stairs. Ranger vanished back into the shadows. Maxwell Thornton stepped into the hallway, to guards in tow. His voice was calm, almost elegant, which made the setting around him feel even more grotesque. "Everything should be ready by 6, he said. "Buyers are en route from Jacksonville. Dr. Hayes is prepping the sedatives." "What about the Sullivan girl?" one guard asked. Thornton stopped outside Lily's door. Despite her mother's meddling, she's inventory. Like the rest, Ranger's body tensed, lips curled in a silent snarl. That voice, that sent Dot, it was him, the man who'd been in their house the night Rebecca died. The one who wore that same cologne as they disappeared down the stairwell. Ranger crept back to Lily's door, pressing close. He went low, apologetic, determined. "You'll come back," Lily whispered. He gave a soft bark. "Their signal?" "Yes, I'll be brave," she said, voice cracking. "Mom always said you were magic. You'd come if I needed you." Ranger held her scent one last time before backing away. Outside, he raced toward the water, choosing the narrowest channel. He didn't hesitate. With a leap, he dove in. The current was cold, but his purpose burned hot. Rebecca had trained him for this, to protect the family she loved. He would not fail again. Back in Meridian Bay, Ethan hovered over a map of Osprey Island. Walker was on the phone with federal teams, while Sheriff Patterson scribbled notes beside. Him, Ranger's appearance narrows the target, Patterson said. "Old Callahan plant's been empty for decades. If I were moving kids, that's where I'd go." "We need a warrant," Walker insisted. "Thornton's got friends in high places. We blow this, he walks." Ethan slammed his hand on the table. "My daughter doesn't have time for paperwork." Ranger found her hand. "We're wasting time." The room went still. Dot in the doorway stood a bleeding, soaked silhouette. Ranger panting hard, blood dripping from his shoulder, eyes locked on Ethan. "My God," Ethan breathed, dropping to his knees. Man and dog stared at each other, eyes ears of pain, blame, silence all washed away in that instant. Ranger's eyes held no anger, just urgency. "Show us," Ethan whispered. Ranger turned, limping, toward the door, looking back to make sure they followed. He led them through the marina, his limp worse with every step. Twice he stumbled, twice he rose. At one slip, he stopped, nose lifted. That's where one of Thornton's boats was tied up earlier. Harbor Master Stevens said, stepping beside them. "Left an hour ago. 3 men and that smooth-talking guy himself." Ethan crouched, gently touching Ranger's paw. Torn pads, raw, bleeding. He had come this far through pain and water and fear. "We need a boat," Ethan said, rising with purpose. Walker was already dialing. 40 minutes, tactical backup, en route. "We don't have 40, Ethan snapped. "He's moving them tonight. Tell me I'm wrong." Ranger barked one sharp, "Certain." Sheriff Patterson looked torn, then shook his head slowly. "I can't greenlight a civilian assault, but none of them had stopped moving. Operation or no operation. I can't justify acting on a hunch from a dog, Agent Walker said, her voice tight. Then I'll do it alone, Ethan shot back, turning to the harbor master. Stevens, I need your boat. The old man paused just long enough to glance at the dog, then tossed him the keys. Tank's full. Radios set to channel 16 if you get in trouble. Walker stepped between Ethan and the dock. This is reckless. People die this way, Mr. Sullivan. You don't get it, Ethan said, voice low and tight. 3 years ago, I ignored my wife's instincts. I failed her. I won't do that to my daughter. He looked at the German shepherd beside him. And I'm done doubting him too. Walker studied Ethan's face, searching for anything but resolve. Then she sighed. I'm coming with you. Patterson, tell the TAC unit to circle in from the south. We'll move in from the north. 10 minutes later, Stevens' weathered fishing boat sliced through the chop, headed straight for Osprey Island. Ethan stood at the helm, eyes locked ahead, Tank at his feet. Walker sat across, checking her weapon. Your wife? She began. Breaking the tense silence, she was a hell of a reporter. Her stories on trafficking were the first red flags we had on Thornton. We just couldn't make it stick. Ethan stared at the looming island. Becca believed journalism gave voice to the silenced. His throat tightened. I thought she was just chasing stories, but she was chasing something real, something dangerous, and it cost her everything, Walker said. From what we gathered, she almost blew Thornton's entire network. Wide open, Ethan's grip on the wheel turned white, and he silenced her for it. We think so, but proof. We'll find it, Ethan said coldly. Right after I bring my daughter home. As they neared the shore, Ethan killed the engine and let the boat glide into a sheltered inlet. Hidden from view, Tank stood poised on the bow, body rigid, nose twitching. He's been here, Ethan murmured. Walker nodded. Your dog's unbelievable. I've worked with elite canine units, but he's operating on another level. Becca always said he was different, Ethan whispered, swallowing. I should have listened to them both. They grounded the boat in a bed of thick reeds, the golden light of late afternoon slanting through the trees. Tank leaped out first, ears high, tail still. He led them with eerie precision through snaking trails, avoiding any open sight lines. After 20 minutes, they caught sight of the rusted hulk of the Callahan processing plant. 3 speedboats were tied to the dock. A black SUV sat parked. Near the door, Thornton's ride, Walker whispered. Ducking into thick brush, 4 guards posted outside. Ethan scanned the building. Where's Lily? Tank nudged Ethan's hand, then jerked his head toward the upper windows, ears twitching. Upstairs. How many kids total? Walker asked, now speaking directly to the dog. Tank scratched at the dirt once. Twice. 3 more times. More than 5, she interpreted, nodding grimly. We need a diversion, Ethan said, eyes darting around the perimeter. Something to pull them off the entrance. Walker checked her watch. Tactical teams still 20 out. Too long. She studied the dock. The boats, if we sabotage one, they'll have to investigate. Before they could act, Tank's body stiffened. A growl rumbled low in his chest. White veterinary van with Meridian Bay Animal Hospital, emblazoned on the side, rolled up beside the SUV. Dr. Hayes, Ethan whispered. They watched as the woman stepped out, carrying a med bag. A guard escorted her into the building. Sedating the kids before moving them, Walker murmured, Thornton's ready to transport. Ethan's jaw clenched. Then we're out of time. He turned to Tank. Can you make a distraction? Something loud. The dog seemed to calculate, head tilted slightly, eyes scanning the area. Then, with a firm look stay, here he vanished into the brush. What's he doing? Walker hissed. Exactly what Becca trained him for, Ethan said, though doubt crept into his voice. He's thinking. A sharp crash rang out from the other side of the property, followed by voices raised in panic. One of the boats had broken loose and slammed into another grinding hull against hull, said, pulling her sidearm. 2 guards peeling off. I'll take the one by the door, she said. You get the guy near the SUV. They sprinted low across the clearing, using the chaos as cover. Walker came from behind, swift and practiced. Taking her target down quietly, Ethan wasn't as graceful. When his target turned, weapon drawn, Ethan did the only thing he could. He charged head-on. The guard raised his gun, but Tank exploded out from beneath the SUV. Launching straight into the man's chest, the weapon flew. The man screamed as Tank's jaws clamped down hard on his wrist. "Good boy," Ethan gasped, rushing to help secure the writhing guard. Walker glanced over. "You're a dog. He's not just trained. He's extraordinary." With both guards down, they slipped into the building through a rusted side door. Inside the hall was dim and cold, lined with corroded machines and dust. Tank led them, his pace slower now. His wound was bleeding again, leaving dark drops behind. They climbed a groaning metal staircase to the upper level. Tank limped to a row of doors-old offices, turned into holding cells. Children's quiet sobs echoed through the thin walls. "Which one?" Ethan whispered. Tank moved to the third door and scraped weakly at the bottom. Tank came a small voice, "Lily." Ethan pressed against the door. "Baby, it's Dad. We're getting you out." "Daddy," she choked out, her voice breaking. "There are others," Lily added. "They're scared." Walker examined the lock. "Industrial grade will need the key." Voices echoed from below. "Thornton and Hayes. We'll start sedating them by age," Hayes said. "Emotionless. Older ones first, they fight back harder." "The buyers are waiting," Thornton replied. "Get the Sullivan girl first. I want her gone." Just as Ethan started to piece things together, the sound of heavy boots echoed up the stairwell. Instantly, he and Walker slipped into a supply closet, tugging Ranger in beside them. Peering through the narrow slit of the door, they watched Thornton and Hayes approach, trailed by a guard jangling a ring of keys. "She has to look marketable." The cold, clinical cruelty in his words made Ethan's stomach twist. Walker placed a steadying hand on his arm, her eyes a silent plea to wait. The guard slid a key into Lily's door. 20 minutes to first shipment," Thornton muttered, checking his watch. "Get moving, Eleanor," unzipping her bag. Then Lily's small voice broke through the silence, sharp with fear. "No, don't touch me." The guard moved to draw his weapon, but Walker's bullet hit first, spinning him into the wall with a cry. "Doctor." Thornton, however, didn't flinch, lips curving in a mock-confused smile. "Agent Walker," he said smoothly, "to what do I owe this disruption?" "Maxwell Thornton, you're under arrest for abduction and trafficking of minors," Walker answered, gun steady. Thornton didn't blink. "Ridiculous. I run a medical mission for underserved children." "Dr. Hayes can save it for court," Walker cut in. "Mr. Sullivan, get your daughter." Ethan didn't wait. He dashed into the room, collapsing to his knees as he pulled Lily close. She was filthy, shaking like a leaf, but alive. "Daddy," she cried, clinging to him. "I knew you'd find me. Knew Ranger would come." At the sound of his name, the dog limped in, battered but determined. Thornton and Hayes, Ethan and Lily moved quickly, opening the other doors. 6 children emerged, dazed and trembling, all of them missing from seaside towns over the last few months. "My backup's on the way," Walker said, cuffing Thornton to a pipe. "We need to hold position." But before she could finish, voices yelled from downstairs, 3 of Thornton's men, drawn by the earlier gunfire. "We're out of time," Walker warned. "Sullivan, get the kids to the roof." Ethan corralled the frightened children toward the stairs. Lily held tight to Ranger's collar. "We can't use it," Ethan muttered, dread rising. Ranger moved toward the roof's ledge, eyes fixed on the loading platform below 30 feet down, but reachable. Ethan stared at the gap. "That drop's too far, honey. We'd break our legs." "Ranger knows. Mom always said he knows." The rooftop door slammed open. Another gunman stepped through, weapon raised. Wounded but unflinching, Ranger charged. They collided mid-air for fists, snarls, and screams. "Go!" Ethan yelled, grabbing the first child. "I'll lower you one at a time." With hands shaking, he helped them descend, each little body dangling in the air before landing safely on the platform. Lily was last, trusting her father completely. The man but took a brutal kick to his injured ribs. Bleeding, he staggered upright and limped toward Ethan. "Come on, boy," Ethan called, arms out. "Let's go." But Ranger didn't move. Instead, he looked toward the door. Footsteps, more danger. "Ranger," now Ethan begged. The dog turned, positioning himself between the threat and the children. "No," Ethan breathed. He knew that look, that decision. Ranger barked one sharp, clear, final. The same bark Rebecca used to call him to duty, Tears blurred Ethan's sight. Now he understood. Ranger hadn't just been trained to find he'd been trained to stay, to protect, even at the cost of his own life. "I'll come back for you," Ethan promised, voice breaking. "Hold on." Above, gunfire, echo shouts, growls, one single shot. Then silence. Thornton, Hayes, and the rest of their crew were in custody, their entire twisted operation exposed. Into his shirt, Ranger's the strongest dog in the world. "That's what Mom always said." Ethan nodded, throat tight. "Yeah, sweetie, she did." Agent Campbell Walker's second approached solemnly. "We found your dog, Mr. Sullivan." Ethan braced. "Is he alive?" Campbell confirmed. "Barely. He took out 2 more men before collapsing. We're getting him emergency care now." Relief flooded Ethan, chased immediately by panic. "Not Hayes's clinic," he blurted. "She's part of this." "Already planned," Campbell assured him. "Coast Guard's taking him to Savannah Sam Chopper that's flying the kids to medical." She clung to his neck, whispering, "Ranger saved us, just like he told Mom he would." Ethan stopped. "What?" Lily looked up at him, her expression too serious for her age. "The night before Mom died," she said quietly, "I heard her talking. To Ranger in her office, she told him if anything ever happened to her, he had to protect us. Everything she knew about Thornton." Lily nodded. "She told Ranger where she hid the proof." Ethan stared ahead, stunned. Rebecca hadn't just trained their dog to protect them. She'd trusted him with the secret that could destroy Thornton for good. Maybe it wouldn't have happened. Maybe she wouldn't have died. If someone had listened. Her, as the helicopter cut across the water, lifting them away from Osprey Island and everything that had unfolded there over the last 3 days, Ethan sat in silence. Next to him, a paramedic was working fast, keeping pressure on Ranger's wounds, trying to stabilize the dog. "We've already lost 2 damn..." Much the coastline of Georgia appeared in the distance, blurred by tears and exhaustion. Lily, quiet as ever, slid her hand into Ethan's. "He's not done yet," she said softly. "He still has more to show us." Inside the fluorescent white walls of Savannah Memorial, Ethan stayed close while doctors checked Lily from head to toe. No visible injuries, but the emotional scars, those would take longer. "But your daughter..." Ethan thought of all those nights after Rebecca's death, how Lily had shut the world out, except for Ranger. She had someone watching over her, Ethan said quietly, "even when I couldn't." Agent Walker stepped into the room, her crisp demeanor worn down by everything they'd been through. "Mr. Sullivan, we've confirmed the identities of the 6 other children rescued. With Lily, all of them were reported missing from towns between Florida and North Carolina." This was Thornton's network. Her voice tightened. "And it's only the beginning. His arrest is shaken up some very powerful people." "Good," Ethan muttered, glancing at Lily, finally asleep. "What about Ranger?" Walker hesitated. "He's in surgery. They're doing everything they can, but it's critical. Gunshot wound, beating, internal bleeding." Ethan closed his eyes, feeling the full weight of 3 years pressed down on him. How many times had he stared at that dog, hating him for being alive, when Rebecca wasn't? How many signs had he ignored, blinded by grief? "There's something else," Walker said, after a beat. "Lily mentioned that Rebecca hid something evidence. We need to find it fast. Thornton's got influence. Without proof, he could walk." Ethan's voice was barely audible. "Ranger knows. Rebecca trained him to remember where it was. If anything happened to her, he'd find it." Walker blinked, skeptical. "You're saying your wife trained your dog to locate hidden evidence in case she was murdered?" 3 days ago, I wouldn't have believed it either," Ethan said, emotion catching in his throat. "But that dog found Lily when trained officers couldn't. He led us straight to Thornton's facility. He's been trying to complete Rebecca's last mission this whole time, and I was too damn blind to see it." In the hallway, a woman in scrubs flagged him down. "Mr. Sullivan, I'm Dr. Winters, lead surgeon from Georgia Veterinary Specialists." She guided him to a consultation room, her tone gentle but grave. "Your dog has suffered massive trauma. The bullet shattered his shoulder blade, 3 ribs fractured, 1 lung punctured, heavy internal bleeding, his back legs severely damaged. Honestly, most animals wouldn't have survived the last 12 hours, let alone still be breathing." Ethan clenched the edge of the table. But he has a chance. Dr. Winters hesitated. He's stable for now, but the next day will be decisive. He's fighting, but you need to prepare yourself. He might not make it through the night." "He's always been a fighter," Ethan said, his voice almost inaudible, his whole life. "We're doing everything we can," she said softly. Ethan just nodded. A cold ache spread through his chest. He thought of Rebecca Howe fiercely. She'd believed in Ranger. He thought of Lily, safe now, because the dog had refused to give up. And he thought of himself, the man who couldn't see what was right in front of him. "Can I see him?" he asked. Dr. Winters led him through a maze of corridors to a dim recovery room. They'd cleared a space in the hospital's animal wing, a special accommodation due to the case. Ranger lay hooked to machines, limp and barely recognizable under the harsh lighting. "Speak to him," the vet whispered. "Even sedated, they know we're here." Ethan stepped closer, his hand shaking as he reached for the only clean patch. Of fur left on the dog's head, the rise and fall of Ranger's chest was shallow and labored. "Hey, buddy," Ethan whispered, his voice already cracking. "You did it. You found her. You kept your promise to Rebecca." The dog didn't open his eyes, but his ear twitched faintly at the mention of her name. Ethan's tears came fast. "I was so wrong about you. So damn wrong. I blamed you for making it, when she didn't. But she knew. She knew you'd guard what was left of us." In the hushed stillness of that room, Ethan Sullivan finally allowed the grief to come, unfiltered and raw. He knelt beside the table, one hand still on Ranger's head. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry I didn't understand." Sooner, a knock at the door broke the silence. Agent Walker, again her face grim. "We need to talk," she said. "There's been a development." Ethan followed her out, leaving a piece of himself in that room. "Thornton's lawyer's already moving," she said, lowering her voice. "He's blaming the whole thing on Dr. Hayes. Says Thornton was duped, that his foundation was hijacked behind his back." Ethan's voice was sharp. "That's a lie. He was there calling the shots." "I know," Walker replied, rubbing her temples. "But it's your word against his, and his attorneys are picking apart every inch of our raid. Without Rebecca's evidence, we've got a legal mess on our hands." "Ranger knows," Ethan said again. "Lily's sure of it. Rebecca trained him." Walker didn't respond right away. Her expression said it all. But after a pause, she nodded. "Then we need him to survive." Ethan glanced back at the recovery room. "They're not optimistic," he admitted, "but they don't know him like Lily does." Walker was quiet. "Thoughtful, Mr. Sullivan. If Rebecca didn't leave that evidence with Ranger, if she had a backup, was there anyone close to her she might have trusted? A friend, a colleague?" Ethan opened his mouth to answer, but down the hallway, shouting broke out at the far end of the hallway. A nurse came running, her breath short and her eyes wide with alarm. "Agent Walker, your unit just phoned in. Thornton's crew ambushed the transport. He's out." Walker's hand dropped instinctively to her holster. "When 20 minutes ago, roadblocks are up. But he's smart, he won't take main roads." Ethan stepped forward, his voice calm but hard-edged. "He'll come for Lily." Walker narrowed her eyes. "Why risk it? Because she can point him out. Because he knows what we found. And because he's the kind of bastard who finishes what he starts." Ethan's chest tightened as he realized what it meant. "We have to get Lily out now." Walker didn't hesitate. She pressed her radio to her mouth, barking commands. "I want the perimeter locked. Nobody moves in or out unless I give the go-ahead. 2 agents are already with Herdmore." Ethan's eyes drifted to the room across the hall, and Ranger. "I can leave 1 man," Walker allowed, her tone clipped. "But Lily and those kids are top priority." "Then I'm not going anywhere," Ethan said firmly. "Thornton doesn't know Ranger made it. He has no clue what that dog remembers." Walker gave a sharp nod and turned, her boots echoing down the corridor. Ethan slid into the recovery room, pulled a chair close, and whispered, "You hear that, boy? He's out. We need you now more than ever." From the window, Ethan watched. The hospital morphed into a fortress. FBI agents manned every door. Staff IDs were double-checked. Outside, patrol cars circled like silent sentinels. Time dragged. The clock slipped past midnight. Dr. Winters came and went, checking the German Shepherd's vitals, each time with a more troubled look. "He's been through hell," she said during her 2 a.m. round, gently adjusting the 4. "It's a miracle he's alive, but his body's maxed out. Ethan nodded, eyes hollow with fatigue, but his focus never left the dog. "Is there anything I can do?" Dr. Winters offered a kind but weary smile. "Exactly what you're doing. Stay with him. Let him know he's not alone." Down the hallway, Walker sat at Lily's bedside. The girl had stirred earlier, startled and scared, until Walker gently eased her into awareness. "Is Ranger okay?" she had asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Your dad's with him," Walker had replied, giving her the truth. "He's badly hurt, but they're doing everything possible." Lily had nodded slowly, her expression heavy with something deeper than fear. "He'll make it. He has to. He's the only one who knows." "Knows what, sweetheart?" Walker had asked. "Where my mom hid everything," Lily said, her eyelids drooping. She told him, "in our special way. Just him and me." Walker tucked the blanket higher around her. She watched the child fade into sleep, awed by the unspoken connection between the little girl and the battered dog fighting for his life. Down the hall, just before sunrise, the hospital fell into a hush. Movement slowed to a crawl, the usual buzz of hospital life muffled under the weight of something bigger. Ethan dozed lightly, his hand on Ranger's ribs, counting each breath. Then something shifted. The dog's chest moved, but wrong. Ethan sat up fast. Ranger's eyes were closed, but one ear twitched, his nose flaring slightly. The room looked the same. Machines hummed steadily. The fourth dripped on, but then Ethan caught a faint trace in the air. A sharp scent carried through the vent. Cologne, not just any cologne, expensive, familiar, the same one Lily had mentioned. From the man who'd taken her, Thornton, he was in the building. Ethan's hand hovered over the call button, then stopped. If Thornton had breached security, he might have hijacked communications too. Anyone, Ethan warned, could be part of the setup. Beneath his palm, Ranger's muscles coiled tight. Despite everything, drugs, wounds, exhaustion, he felt it too. The scent, the danger, the ghost of the man who murdered Rebecca. "You smell it, huh?" Ethan murmured, his lips near Ranger's ear. "He's here." One of the dog's eyes cracked open, cloudy but focused. A low, trembling growl crept from his chest. Ethan didn't wait. Moving with care, he reached up and turned off the monitors. Instantly, the screen flatlined. It would bring nurses fast, and maybe Thornton, too. They had minutes, maybe less. "I know this hurts," Ethan whispered, detaching the four. "But I need you just one more time." He cradled the wounded dog in both arms, Ranger's weight like a stone of trust pressed against him. Not a single whimper passed the dog's lips, only a soft exhale of pain swallowed. In silence, Ethan cracked open the door. The hallway was empty almost. 30 feet away, an FBI agent stood guard at the corner. Just then, a hospital orderly came up with a paper cup. "Coffee." The agent nodded thanks, took a sip, then collapsed. The orderly dragged him into a nearby closet. Ethan's heart skipped. The disguise didn't hold. It was Thornton, and he was heading for Lily. Ethan backed into the room, brain racing. No phone, no backup, no way to warn anyone. The signal had to be jammed. In his arms, Ranger stirred, eyes locked on the ceiling vent. "You want to go through there?" Ethan breathed. Ranger didn't blink, just stared. Knew, a plan. "You really were trained for everything, weren't you?" Ethan muttered, lowering the dog to the floor. He dragged a chair beneath the vent, climbed up, and pulled the grate loose. Lifting Ranger once again, he eased both of them into the shaft. It was tight, cold metal pressed against his arms. Every inch forward was a struggle. But they moved inch by inch, Ranger, guiding with faint twitches and breaths. Through the slits below, Ethan glimpsed the corridor. 2 more men joined Thornton, dressed like staff, professionals. Another agent fell to drugged coffee. They worked fast, efficient. A junction loomed ahead. Ranger stiffened, ears twitching, toward the right-hand tunnel. Ethan adjusted course. The metal groaned. Just ahead, another grate offered a view into Lily's room. Walker stood inside, her back to the door, murmuring into her radio. 2 beds sat in the room. One held Lily still out cold, and another child. Clutched tightly in his arms, the door eased open with barely a sound. Thornton stepped inside, no longer in disguise as orderly uniform tossed aside, revealing a tailored suit and a suppressed pistol gleaming in his grip. Walker, fully focused on her radio, never heard him come in. Ethan had only seconds to decide. No weapon, no warning he could give without blowing his position. So he did the one thing left. He kicked the ventilation grate with every ounce of force he had. It slammed down onto the floor with a metallic roar, landing right between Thornton and his targets. Walker spun on instinct, weapon drawn. Thornton fired. The bullet sliced across her arm just as she dove behind a nearby medical cart. "FBI, drop your weapon," she shouted, returning fire as Thornton ducked back into the doorway for cover. The gunfire woke Lily, who let out a terrified scream at the sight of the man who'd stolen her. The other child burst into sobs. Ethan stared at the 8-foot drop below. On a normal day, maybe, but with Ranger cradled in his arms. Before he could make the call, Ranger made it for him, drawing on a final, burning reserve of loyalty. The dog lunged from Ethan's arms, hurtling through the vent opening and crashing straight onto Thornton's back. Even with his shattered body, Ranger's fury was pure and unrelenting. His jaws locked around Thornton's gun arm, steel trap tight. The pistol discharged into the tile as the two slammed into the wall. Ethan didn't wait. He dropped through the opening and landed hard beside them. Thornton's eyes went wide. With disbelief, the sight of the man and the dog he'd assumed were either dead or out of the picture. "Stay the hell away from my family," Ethan growled, slamming his fist into Thornton's face with the weight of 3 years of buried rage. Walker emerged from cover, her Glock trained dead center on the infamous trafficker. In the corridor, alarms exploded into life as hospital security and FBI teams stormed the floor. "Daddy!" Lily cried out, scrambling off her bed. "Stay back, baby!" Ethan warned, shielding her from the bloody scene. But Lily wasn't looking at him or Thornton. Her gaze dropped to Ranger, sprawled on the floor in a crimson halo. "Ranger," she whispered, knees hitting the tile. "Please don't go, ... Walker kept her weapon steady on Thornton while radioing for backup. Within seconds, agents swarmed in, locking the scene down. "We've got his men in custody downstairs," Agent Campbell reported. 3 of them, loaded to the teeth, had a car running at the service dock. Walker nodded, jaw clenched, sliding her sidearm into its holster as agents yanked Thornton to his feet and cuffed him. "Get a trauma team for the dog," she barked. "Now." Dr. Winters burst in. Her heels, their expressions turned grave the second they saw Ranger. His last heroic act had torn through every stitch of healing his broken body had begun. "He's going into shock," Winters announced, moving with the calm speed of practiced hands. "We need to prep for emergency surgery." As the team gathered around, Lily leaned close to Ranger's ear. "You did it," she whispered. "You kept your promise to Mom. Now please stay with us." One of Ranger's eyes fluttered open, landing on her face. His tail gave a faint twitch, just the ghost of the wag he used to greet her with every morning. Then ... stillness. His eyes slid shut. The heart monitor shrieked flat. "We're losing him," Winters said. "Crash cart." Ethan wrapped Lily in his arms, shielding her as the team launched into action. Walker stood nearby, watching in silence as they fought to save the dog who had taken down Maxwell Thornton's empire with nothing but loyalty and courage. "He can't die," Lily sobbed into Ethan's chest. "He hasn't shown us where Mama put everything yet." Ethan held her tighter, tears streaking his face. "I know, Mia, I know." The medical team refused to quit. Their efforts turned frantic hands, working with fierce precision. Winters drew adrenaline and drove it straight into Ranger's heart. The violence of it was jarring, so unlike the reverent way she'd spoken of him earlier. "Come on, boy," she pleaded. "You didn't come this far to stop now." Just then, Agent Campbell returned, urgency in his eyes. "Walker, we've got a situation." Thornton's lawyers already filed motions, without hard evidence linking him directly. They're claiming this whole thing's built on circumstantial. "Not now," Walker snapped, eyes never leaving Ranger. Winters looked up, her face said it all before the words came. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "We've done everything we could." The silence that followed was heavy as death. Dr. Winters stepped back, grief written in the soft lines of her face. Medical training teaches distance, but some lives pierce through the armor. This scarred, faithful dog had broken through it all. "Time of death, 6:42 p.m., she said, voice cracking under the weight of it. Lily's scream tore through the room, raw and searing. Even the agents turned away. She tore out of Ethan's arms, throwing herself over Ranger's lifeless form. "No," she sobbed into his fur. "You can't leave. You promised, Mom." Ethan dropped beside her, heartbreaking all over. Again, how could he explain loss to a child who'd already buried her mother, and now the dog who had kept her safe through it all? "Lily," he whispered, resting a trembling hand on her back. "He fought harder than anyone ever could. He saved you. Baby girl, he saved all of us. But he still has to show us," she insisted, clinging to Ranger's body. "Mama's secret things. He's the only one who knows." Walker knelt beside them, voice gentle. "Lily, sweetie, do you remember anything your mom might have said? Maybe something about where she hid her research?" Lily shook her head, curls bouncing, her hands still tangled in Ranger's fur. "It wasn't like that. They had a special language, things only he understood." Ethan blinked. A memory struck like lightning. Rebecca, barefoot in the backyard, Ranger beside her. Moving on command as she whispered odd phrases and flashed hand signals, she'd always laughed it off. Training games, she called them. Treasure. Hunts. Ethan's voice cracked as the realization hit. "Treasure hunt," he murmured aloud. Lily's head snapped up. Mama would say, "Find the treasure, Ranger," and he'd go right to the spot. Sometimes in the garden, sometimes at the beach. I thought it was just another one of her quirks. She'd weight down objects, toss them in our pond, and send Ranger after them. His voice thickened. Walker was already thinking tactically. "She must have hidden it somewhere only Ranger could get to," she said, her voice low and sharp. "Somewhere Thornton and his guys wouldn't even think to check." Ethan replied. Dr. Winters cleared her throat, gently but firmly. "Sorry, but we'll have to move him soon." Despite what they'd just discovered, nothing changed the reality. Ranger lay motionless in that sterile hospital room, his incredible journey ending far from the home he protected. "Can we be alone with him?" Ethan asked quietly, pulling Lily close against his side. "Of course," the doctor said, and the room emptied in silence. Father and daughter were left with the body of the protector who had given them everything. Ethan knelt beside the table, one hand resting on Ranger's still warm ribs, the other holding Lily's trembling shoulders. "You remember what your mama used to say about Ranger?" he asked softly. Lily wiped her tears and looked up. "What did she say?" "That he wasn't just a dog," Ethan said, voice thick. "She said he had an old soul." He smiled, pain lining his features as he recalled Rebecca's quiet certainty. "She always said, some souls come back to finish what they started." "Believe that's real?" Lily whispered. "I don't know Mia, but I know one thing: Ranger kept every promise he ever made." "To your mama, to you," his voice cracked, "even to me, when I didn't deserve it." They sat in silence, the morning sun now spilling in through the window, then stepped back at the doorway. He turned one last time. His little girl, brave and broken, was whispering into the ear of the dog who had been her protector, her silent guardian. It was a picture Ethan knew he'd carry with him forever, heartbreaking and beautiful all at once. Out in the hall, Walker stood with Campbell. They paused when Ethan came out. "I'm so sorry, Sullivan," Walker said, sincerity deep in her tone. "That dog was something else." Ethan nodded, his throat closed around the words. Campbell started, about the evidence Walker shot him a warning look, but Campbell pushed on, times tight. "Thornton's lawyers are already saying he didn't know anything, that Hayes used him. Without direct proof, this whole case could fall apart. Once Lily's ready, we're going home. If Rebecca hid something, we'll find it with or without Ranger's help." Inside, Lily rested her forehead gently on Ranger's and whispered, "Just for him." The memories poured in, how he'd wait for her every day after school, sleep outside her door ever since Mama passed. How he'd listen to all her secrets like he understood. Every word. "Mom said you were magic," she murmured, tears dropping onto his still face. "Said you could do things no other dog could, that you'd always keep your promises." She ran her fingers along his torn ear, remembering the day Mama had cleaned his wounds the first time they met a dog abused, but never broken. "I know. You tried," she said softly. "You found me when I was lost. You brought Daddy when I needed him. You stopped the bad man." Her tiny hand pressed against his chest. It was quiet, too quiet. "But I still need you," she sobbed. We all do. If we can't find what Mama left, he might get away. The hospital went on outside, nurses walking, agents talking, but in this room. Don't leave us. Maybe it was nerves firing one last time. Another tremor, stronger. Then unbelievably a tiny lift in his chest. A breath. She screamed, bolting upright. Daddy! He moved! He moved! Ethan came running, Walker on his heels. Baby, sometimes the body. No, look, she pointed. He's breathing. Dr. Winters was already there, stethoscope in hand. She pressed it to Ranger's chest. Her eyes widened, her calm cracking. He has a heartbeat, she said, stunned, weak. But it's there. Code blue, get the crash team back. Injections given. Dr. Winters was all motion now, no longer the quiet, weary doctor she was fighting. For him, I don't understand, she muttered during a pause. He was flatlined. 7 minutes. He heard me, Lily said, with certainty that made the air still. He knows we need him. Ethan stood frozen, watching the impossible unfold. This dog, this miracle who had spent 3 years chasing Rebecca's last wish, who had nearly died saving Lily, was clawing his way back from the edge. I've seen some weird things, Walker said beside him, quiet and shaken. Rebecca always said he was special, Ethan replied, barely breathing. I should have believed her. Dr. Winters approached, cautious. He's stable for now, but it's bad. His injuries haven't changed. She paused. Even if he pulls through, recovery would be impossible, Ethan asked. In medicine, we talk probabilities, not possibilities. She said, and the odds are awful. But after what I just saw, she looked back at the dog. I won't say it's impossible. Her small hand stroked the one soft patch on Ranger's battered head. Her grief had turned into fierce resolve, like her touch alone could keep him here. He's not going anywhere, she whispered. He still has work to do. The sun moved past noon. Ranger floated in that strange, holding on. And Dr. Winters, the one who'd pronounced him gone, documented every sign with quiet awe, though she feared pushback from fellow doctors. Staff with no reason to be near that particular ICU wing suddenly found excuses to pass by the glass window, where the dog who had risked everything to save two kidnapped children clung to life. By midday, the story had hit the press. Outside, a small swarm of reporters had gathered, held back only by local cops and a couple of stone-faced FBI agents. Inside the room, Ethan sat slumped in a chair beside Ranger's bed, drained beyond belief. Across from him, his daughter hadn't moved in hours. Despite the trauma, the fear, the chaos, Lily wouldn't budge. She stayed rooted by the dog's side, refusing to eat, sleep, or speak. A nurse eventually brought in a narrow cot, sliding it close enough for Lily to rest her hand in Ranger's fur, even as she slept. You should try to rest too, Walker said gently, stepping in with 2 steaming cups. You've been through hell. Ethan took the coffee with quiet gratitude. Any updates on Thornton? Walker's jaw tightened. His lawyers are already spinning a story, claim Hayes blackmailed him, that he didn't know anything about the trafficking, that he was investigating the facility himself. Ethan scoffed. That's insane. No, it's calculated, Walker said. Without hard proof linking him to the operation, it's just his word against ours. And his word comes with a whole army of Ivy League attorneys and friends in high places. Ethan glanced at the monitors, each steady beep echoing like a countdown. So we need Rebecca's files more than ever. Exactly, Walker said. Grimly. Preliminary hearings, Monday. That gives us 3 days. 3 days to unearth evidence that's been buried for 3 years. And everything depends on a dog who shouldn't even be breathing. He's gonna pull through, Ethan said softly, watching Lily finally drift off, her fingers still laced in Ranger's fur. He has too. Somehow, against every medical prediction, Ranger survived the night. At 5 a.m., Dr. Winters found Ethan dozing in the same chair, head tilted back, exhaustion painted on his face. Lily was still curled on the cot, her small hand resting protectively on the German shepherd's paw. He's stabilizing, Dr. Winters whispered, reviewing the chart. Blood pressure's up. Oxygen levels are honestly, they're better than we could have hoped. She hesitated. I don't have a medical explanation, but he's fighting, Ethan said, straightening. Yeah, and somehow, he's winning. Dr. Winters carefully peeled back the bandages, checking for signs of failure. Repairs are holding. If this keeps up, we may begin easing the sedation later today. Try to see if he wakes. Ethan held on to the hope like a lifeline. But the clock was still ticking to days until Thornton's hearing. And if Rebecca's data didn't resurface, the man behind the ring might walk free. By sunrise, Walker returned with breakfast and another legal blow. Thornton's team just filed to have all charges dropped, she said, handing Ethan a cup. They're saying we broke due process, that the raid was illegal, that the evidence was tainted. Ethan's gut twisted. Is it going to stick? Not all the way, she said. We've got the children's statements, Lily's included. Hayes is in custody, starting to talk she wants a deal. But they'll still spin it, won't they? Ethan asked, watching the rhythmic rise and fall of Ranger's chest. They'll paint Thornton as just another clueless rich guy. And that's exactly what they're doing, Walker confirmed. He's the good-hearted donor, hijacked by evil subordinates. Ethan's voice dropped. He knew Rebecca told him everything. Sullivan told me. I believe you, Walker said. But courts don't work on belief. We need something that ties him directly. And soon, as they spoke, Lily stirred and blinked, then immediately checked Ranger's face. Her eyes lit up. He's better, she whispered. I told him all night he had to be so we could go home and find Mom's treasure. Ethan smiled softly at his daughter's fierce belief. Dr. Winters thinks they might lighten his sedation soon. Maybe he'll wake up. Lily nodded firmly. He will. He's not sick. He's just playing dead. Walker raised a brow. Playing dead? Yeah, Lily explained. That was one of his trucks. Loud noises, people poking him. He'd stay still until she said the secret word. A chill swept over Ethan. What secret word? Lily shrugged. She never told me. Said it was their special thing. Could this be more than just a trick? Could Ranger have been trained to fake death's his final defense in a situation gone wrong? Before the thought could settle, Dr. Winters returned with 2 vet nurses. We're starting the sedation taper, she said. It's delicate, but I believe he's ready. The team adjusted the IVs and monitors. Ethan and Lily stood close, silent. Walker excused herself, promising to bring back food and updates. How long before we know? Ethan asked, once the process began. Could be hours, Winters replied. The meds take time to clear, and even then, he may not have the strength yet. Lily climbed onto the chair, leaning toward her dog's face. He'll wake up, she whispered. He knows we need him. Time passed slowly. Medical staff came and went. Around noon, the first faint flickers of hope appeared. Deeper breathing, slight muscle twitches. Ethan brought Lily lunch, which she barely touched, more interested in whispering to her dog. By mid-afternoon, Walker returned with troubling news. The judge on the case, he's got ties to Thornton's charity. Deep ones. We're filing a motion to get him recused, but it's a complication we didn't need. Ethan rubbed his temples. If Ranger wakes up, can we get to Meridian Bay in time? I've got a chopper prepped, Walker said. The second your dog's stable, we're flying. 40 minutes. As the sun began to dip low, golden light flooding the room, Ranger stirred. It was small at first, his paw twitching. Then, his eyelids fluttered. A faint whimper escaped his throat. Ranger! Lily cried, grabbing his paw. It's me! It's Lily! Slowly, painfully, Ranger's eyes opened, cloudy with meds, but conscious. His gaze locked on Lily's face recognition. Blooming. Then, with great effort, he turned his head toward Ethan. Hey, buddy! Ethan choked out, his voice trembling. Welcome back! At that moment, Dr. Winters re-entered, breath-catching as she saw her miracle patient awake at last. This is unreal, she whispered, reviewing the dog's neurological responses. He shouldn't even be conscious, much less awake. Can we take him home? Lily asked urgently. He has to help us find Mom's treasure. The vet's clinical professionalism clashed with her awareness of how desperate the situation was. Medically, he shouldn't be moved for at least a week. She began, but then paused. Watching the battered dog struggle to lift his head despite the immense trauma he'd endured. I understand these are exceptional circumstances, she added carefully. This isn't just a family matter, Walker confirmed, stepping in after hearing about Ranger's unexpected recovery. It's a matter of national security. We'll arrange continuous care, both in transit and at their home. Dr. Winters considered the request, then finally nodded. "I'll write up a complete treatment plan. He'll need around-the-clock supervision for support. Strong pain meds and he must remain completely off those injuries." "We'll follow everything to the letter," Ethan promised. By late afternoon, they'd modified a stretcher specially. For Ranger's fragile frame, the helicopter was standing by a vet tech, ready to accompany them the entire way to Meridian Bay. Dr. Winters handed off the medication and instructions personally, her professional shell softening as she looked at her patient one last time. "This dog has shattered every expectation," she told Ethan as the final straps were secured. "I don't throw around the word miracle, but I honestly don't know what else to call this." Ethan gave her a somber nod, glancing at Lily, who still refused to leave Ranger's side knot, even for the transport. "Rebecca always said he was one of a kind," he said. "I should have believed her." The chopper ride was quiet, tense. The rotors drowned out all conversation, and even Lily remained silent, clutching Ranger's paw gently as the wind roared outside. Despite his condition, the German shepherd's gaze stayed alert, drawn always to Lily. Even in pain, something in him had shifted, as if he knew his purpose wasn't finished. They landed outside Meridian Bay under a sky already deepening into night. An ambulance waited to take them the last leg to the Sullivan residence. When they arrived, the house was dark, lifeless after days of abandonment. FBI agents swept every corner, clearing it before anyone was allowed in. Inside, the living room had been turned into a mini hospital. A special bed awaited, surrounded by monitoring gear and heat packs. Ethan switched on the lights, adjusting the thermostat to fight off the creeping cold. "Feels weird being back," he admitted to Walker as they stepped into the kitchen. "After all this, we'll have agents posted out front all night," she assured him. "No one's laying a finger on your family again." Meanwhile, in the living room, Lily had already claimed her spot beside Ranger's bed, one small hand resting protectively on his paw. His eyes never left hers. There was something intense in that look, something silent, unspoken, but deeply understood between them. "He's trying to tell me something," Lily said suddenly, glancing up at her dad. I think he wants to show us now." "Sweetheart, he can't walk," Ethan reminded her gently. Dr. Winters was very clear. "I know," Lily said, brow furrowed. "But maybe he can tell us. Like a game, like hot and cold." Her innocent idea gave the adults pause. Walker and Ethan exchanged a quick look before Walker crouched beside the bed. "Could be worth trying," she said. "Ranger, we're looking for what Rebecca hid. Can you help us?" Ranger blinked, his eyes shifting between her and Lily. His tail gave the faintest twitch, a gesture full of restrained energy. "See?" Lily said brightly. "He understands." "Let's narrow it down," Ethan said, kneeling beside them. "Ranger, is it in this house?" The dog blinked again, but gave no clear answer. Maybe he needs to hear it. "How Mom used to say it," Lily offered. Ethan paused, his mind flashing back to the old training sessions, Rebecca's careful commands. The bond she had with her canine partner, Ranger, he said softly. "Can you show us the treasure?" The reaction was immediate. The dog's ears rose, his eyes snapped into focus, and he made an effort to lift his head. "That's it," Lily exclaimed. "That's what Mom used to say." Walker leaned in. "Ranger, is the treasure here, in the house?" The dog's gaze turned toward the kitchen, then slowly toward the back door. "Outside," Ethan murmured. This time, the tail twitched again more deliberately. "The backyard," Walker said, eyes widening. "Could it be in the pond?" Ethan asked. Ranger gave a soft whine, his eyes flashing frustration as if the words weren't enough. "He needed more. He wants to show us," Lily said quietly. "He thinks we won't find it without him." Walker checked the time, tension lining her face. "The preliminary hearing is at 9 a.m. If we're going to uncover that evidence, it has to be tonight." Ethan looked at his daughter, then at Ranger. "The stretcher we brought him in on, can we use it? Just to get him to the pond?" The vet tech frowned. "Only if it's absolutely necessary. And no more than 15 minutes. Please," Lily begged. "He needs to show us." After a quick but intense debate, they agreed. Ranger would remain strapped in, wrapped warmly against the cold, with his vitals monitored every second. With care, they lifted the stretcher and moved through the house. The back door creaked open. The moon was full, casting silver across the pond, Rebecca's beloved garden feature, surrounded by ferns and flowers that shimmered in the moonlight. As they reached the water's edge, Ranger became laser-focused, his gaze fixed on a specific point across the surface. He whined again, frustrated by his own limitations. "There," Lily said, pointing. "He's looking at that big rock on the other side." Without hesitation, Walker stepped into the cold water, flashlight cutting through the ripples. "There's something," she called, her fingers probing the space beneath the rock. "Feels like a metal box." She kept digging, the water swirling around her as she pried it loose. Moments later, she lifted a waterproof case from the pond's floor about the size of a shoebox. It was sealed with a combination lock. Despite the years it had been hidden, the box looked untouched. "Any clue what the combo could be?" Walker asked as he set the dripping case on the riverbank. Ethan stared at it, shaking his head. "Rebecca never shared things like that with me. Combos, passwords. She kept them to herself." "Try Ranger's birthday," Lily offered gently. "You remember when that is?" Ethan blinked, surprised. Lily gave a soft nod. "April 12th. Mom always made him a special cake with a candle on it." Walker keyed in 0412. The lock didn't budge. "Any other guesses?" From his stretcher, Ranger whined again, louder this time, staring at the case with something close to desperation. "Wait," Ethan said, eyes narrowing. "When did your mom rescue him?" "The actual date." Lily's face lit up. "November 8th, she called it his gotcha day. We celebrated every year." Walker tried 1108. With a sharp click, the lock gave way. Exactly 1 year later, the Sullivan backyard looked nothing like it had. Gone were the weeds that had choked Rebecca's garden in the months after her death. Now it was alive with color-organized rows of perennials swaying in the breeze. The pond, once clogged with algae, shimmered beneath the June sun. Koi darted under lily pads like living jewels. Ethan stood on the rebuilt deck, watching Lily sit on the grass next to Ranger. The German Shepherd's recovery had defied every prediction. He still bore the Scarzan awkward limp, a torn ear, and a chest stitched like a roadmap butt. His eyes were full of light, full of purpose. Can you believe it's been a year? Agent Walker Diana now, just Diana joined him with 2 glasses of lemonade. "Sometimes it feels like it happened last night," Ethan said, taking the glass. "Other times it feels like it happened to someone else." Everything had shifted since that night by the pond inside Rebecca's waterproof case. They'd found it all Murray cards packed with financial data, footage showing Maxwell Thornton giving direct orders to traffickers, and a journal chronicling her investigation step by step. But the final blow, a recorded call between Thornton and Dr. Eleanor Hayes. They spoke calmly, clinically, about removing obstacles. Rebecca Sullivan's name had been spoken out loud. No spin, no doubt. Despite the army of lawyers he summoned, Thornton couldn't dodge the storm. He was denied bail, tried and sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms for trafficking, conspiracy, and first-degree murder. Dr. Hayes cut a deal in exchange for testimony. Her cooperation helped tear down operations across 6 states. The kids rescued from Osprey Island were back with their families. A fund seeded by Thornton's seized assets now covered their therapy, housing, and school. And through it all, Ranger had clawed his way back from the edge of death. Bed rest, surgeries, weeks of barely moving. But Lily never left his side. She read to him, slept next to him, coaxed out his first tail wag, and cheered for every wobbly step across the living room. "Lot of cars out front," Diana noted, glancing toward the driveway. "Big day?" Ethan smiled. "It's his retirement party. Official FBI recognition," she asked, amused. "Yep, even though he never wore a badge." Diana raised her glass. "That dog took down a global trafficking ring. He's earned this." They watched as people gathered. Sheriff Patterson talking with Dr. Winters, who had flown in from Savannah, Agent Campbell helping set up chairs with their neighbor, Mrs. Kaplan, who now watched Lily after school. Families of the rescued children stood quietly together, bound by trauma, healing, and shared gratitude. "Dad," Lily called out from the yard, waving. "Ranger wants to show you something." Ethan headed down the steps, his chest tight with emotion. Ranger stood tall as his frame allowed, ears alert, tail flicking gently. "Ready?" Lily asked, eyes locked with the dog's. She made a subtle hand gesture, one Ethan recognized from Rebecca's training sessions. Ranger, find family. The shepherd turned, scanned the yard, then limped with purpose toward a tree where Lily had placed a small wooden box. He lifted it gently, carried it back, and placed it at Ethan's feet. Open it, Lily whispered, nearly trembling. Inside was a photograph Ethan had never seen. Rebecca cradling baby Lily with a younger ranger at her feet, all bathed in soft sunlight. A perfect memory frozen in time. Where did this come from? He asked, voice cracking. Ranger showed me, Lily said, as if it were obvious. Mom had a hiding place in her office, behind the bookshelf. He took me there last week. Ethan knelt down, one arm around his daughter, the other around the dog's strong neck. Thank you, he whispered to them both. The ceremony wasn't long, but it meant the world. Diana presented Ranger with an honorary FBI K9 medal. The dog stayed still as Lily fastened it to his collar, tail sweeping once across the grass. Sheriff Patterson gave a short speech about bravery that left most people wiping their eyes. Dr. Winters shared her paper about Ranger's recovery, now required reading in vet schools nationwide. As the sun began to set, guests filtered out until only the Sullivans and Diana remained. They sat on the deck, listening to frogs chirping from the pond and watching fireflies flicker to life. I've been meaning to tell you something, Diana said, setting her glass down. I'm being transferred to the Atlanta field office. I'll be heading up a new task force trafficking focused. You'll be closer to us, Lily said brightly. You can visit Ranger more. Diana smiled. I'd like that a lot. As the sky deepened into twilight, Ethan noticed Ranger standing at the pond again, still silent, watching, trusting his gut. Ethan joined him, resting a hand on the dog's scarred head. What do you see, buddy? He asked softly. Ranger didn't move, just leaned into Ethan's leg, pressing there like an anchor dot, and in that quiet moment, Ethan understood why Rebecca had trusted this dog with everything. Their bond was no longer just one of man and animal. It was forged in fire and grief, rebuilt on loyalty and love. It was something deeper than words, something unshakable, something earned from the back porch. Lily's voice rang out with excitement. Poppy, Diana's showing me photos of her. Puppy, come look. Puppy training already, Ethan called back, giving Ranger one last pat. What do you think, old man? As if understanding, Ranger raised his head, those amber eyes filled with a mixture of tired wisdom and playful defiance, then turned, limping but determined, toward the house where Lily waited. Ethan lingered, for a moment, gaze drifting back to the pond where Rebecca's final message had surfaced. In the thickening twilight, he could almost see her standing tall, fierce pride on her face for the dog she'd trusted, the daughter who never stopped believing, and the husband who'd finally learned to see clearly. Into the night, before turning toward the warm glow of home where Ranger had already curled beside Lily, his head resting on her lap, ears twitching at every sound. Some protectors, Ethan had come to understand, never truly rest. They simply find new ways to honor old promises. As stars blinked to life in the deep velvet sky over Meridian Bay, the Sullivan family changed but whole sat close together on the porch. Lily nestled between her dad and Ranger, small fingers gently exploring the lines of his battered fur. Diana shared tales of her latest rescue post, while Ethan manned the grill Rebecca had insisted on buying all those years ago. Life had reshaped. Itself no longer what it once was, but steadied by grief, strengthened by love, and made bright again by small, steady joys. At the center of it all was a German shepherd with a scarred face and a quiet heart who continued his silent duty, keeper of the present and the memory of what had been lost but never forgotten. In a time when loyalty feels like it's slipping away, Ranger's story reminds us of what still matters. This battle-worn shepherd who dragged a child to safety through pain that would have broken lesser souls, who clawed his way back to life not for himself, but because he knew his family still needed him. He stands as a symbol. For all of us, we understand sacrifice. We've had nights like Ethan's when grief nearly swallowed us wholly, to stumble upon a lifeline we hadn't known we were reaching for. Maybe it was a friend, a faithful dog, a truth we'd buried so deep we almost forgot it mattered. Ranger's journey speaks to something sacred. That kind of loyalty you don't always recognize at first. That kind of love that shows up when everything else falls apart. It tells us it's never too late to open our eyes, to change, to speak aloud what we once couldn't. And real healing isn't about going back to the way things were. It's about finding peace inside what remains. So now think back. Who's been your ranger? Who stood their ground when you wanted to run? Who saw you even when you couldn't face yourself? Maybe today's the day to look them in the eye and say the words, "Ethan finally could. I see you now."